Why does your child know their letter sounds, but they can't blend words? Quite honestly, this is a huge common problem all over the country. And I work with many parents and hundreds of students that have this problem anywhere between kinder to sixth grade and beyond. But I work with TK through sixth grade at my school site. Right now, we have a literacy crisis. And I don't know why there's not enough people that are talking about this term, phonological or phonemic awareness. So those two terms sound like big fancy words, and it's like, oh, as a parent, like I don't need to know that, I don't need to hear that. Well, I've been a teacher for 13 years. Hi, I'm Miss M. And for the first 7 years of being a teacher, I didn't know what that word meant either. And that is part of the literacy crisis, that teachers and parents and adults do not understand the importance of phonological and phonemic awareness. And so, back to like that bridge, crossing a bridge between knowing your letter sounds and actually reading a word is one of the hardest bridges to get your child across in order to actually start reading. Now, for some kids, this comes really, really easily, but for most kids, it doesn't. And don't feel like you are alone as a parent struggling and worried that your child is not a reader. And then if we just keep ignoring the problem and we let our kids go into, second, third, fourth grade, then they start hating reading, they start hating writing, and then that problem snowballs. And so, what we're trying to do here with Mini Minds is we're trying to just spread the knowledge of really simple pillars of literacy and foundations of literacy that every adult needs to know. Grandparents, parents, caregivers, teachers, everyone. I work with teachers, I work with parents, and I work with students. So we're all humans. And the fact is, like the human brain, it all of our brains learn the same way when it comes to reading. There's been decades and decades of research since like the 1980s that show how our brains learn how to read. So let's think about when we are babies, or your child was a baby, right? They're learning to put sounds together, right? At the very beginning, they might go, and then they're putting ma, and then they're putting mama together. That's supernatural. Our brains are wired to learn how to speak, but our brains are not wired to learn how to read. These little letters and scribbles that are written on papers and in books, that is a human created system. In order for us to like write things down and document and tell stories beyond just sitting around the campfire, right? So, when it comes to sounds, that like as a parent, you should feel really confident in it because we all know sounds. We all really do. That comes really natural to us. So when I say the two terms, phonological awareness and phonemic awareness, I don't want you to get scared and I don't want you to shy away because those two pieces are what's missing in a lot of our students. And once they get it, boom, reading clicks and everything becomes really easy. And reading is the gateway to everything, right? Reading, writing, spelling, jobs, everything. And so let's go ahead and talk about those two big terminologies. So before we talk about letters, that is, parents are like, wait, my child doesn't know how to read and I can't get them to blend. My teacher is telling us that my child isn't blending, and you want to just throw a bunch of letters at them and just keep practicing reading, right? Sound it out, sound it out, sound it out. We're going to avoid using that word sound it out. What we really want to do is we want to start talking about sounds, okay? The reading starts in the ears way before it starts in the eyes, truly. And there's a progression. So first, this is more like 2 to 4 year olds is where we work a lot on that phonological awareness. So this is when like kids are listening a lot. And think about if you know another language or you learned another language, there was a lot of listening that you had to do to figure out how sentences were put together, right? That's the big picture. That's phonological awareness. We have to understand that sentences have words and words have syllables and syllables have pieces to those, right? So like little parts of the word makes up that syllable. That's where phonemic awareness comes in. But phonological awareness is also talking about rhyme and the fact that words can be broken up. Rainbow. How many syllables are in rainbow? Two. Let's take away the word rain. What's left? Bow. So playing with words, a lot of nursery rhymes do this. So if you're singing with your children, if they're repeating after you, you're doing all of that great work. But there are some things that are very specific that I do with my two children. By the way, I do have two kids. I have a 5-year-old and I have a 7-year-old that are we speak English at home and they're learning Spanish at school full time. They're in a dual immersion program, so full immersion Spanish. And a lot of the language in English and Spanish do overlap, but at the end of the day, reading is reading and brains are brains. So we are working on strong phonological and phonemic awareness here at home, and that is really doing wonders to their reading and learning in Spanish when it comes to listening and reading and writing. So, what you can do with phonological awareness, I do have a reading Jumpstart guide. It's called Sounds to Sentences, and there's a diagnostic in there. So, if you're watching this and you have a like 2, 3, 4-year old, that's really where you could start. And there's a little like mini assessment. I don't even like calling it an assessment because it feels formal, but it's not. It's really simple. You can do it. The directions are in there. And with that, you can determine where your child is at with phonological awareness, because truly there is a continuum. There are building blocks of how your child grows and learns in this area. So being able to know how many words make up a sentence is kind of like that first level, and then we can go to rhyming, and then syllables, how many syllables are in words. And then that's kind of where we're at with phonological awareness. It's like the big umbrella term of understanding sounds and making sure that reading starts with the ears. And then we can go into phonemic awareness, which this sound to sentence Jumpstart guide does do. But we can go deeper if you have a child who's in kinder, first, or second, and they are still struggling with blending. Okay. Kindergarten, truly, they shouldn't be blending towards the end of the year. So if you're watching this and your child is entering kinder or actively in kinder, there are ways that you can build blending with letters, like actually reading the words, again, with just auditory practices and drills and activities. So when we zoom in a little bit, because remember, we have the umbrella of phonological awareness, right? That's that big umbrella term. We're going to zoom into phonemic awareness. And that's the tiniest sounds in words. So can your child hear them? Can they pull them apart? Can they change them? So these are the skills that make blending possible. When I work with my first graders who are not blending words like cat, they're most likely having a really hard time just processing the word cat auditorily. So if I say, what word am I saying? What word did I say? And if your child can go map, then they're ready for blending when it comes to putting the letters in front of their face. So that's the difference between throwing letters and asking them to blend and then just doing simple drills like what I just did to see if they can possibly push those sounds together auditorily. So I want you to really think about these 6 skills. Okay, we're going to go through these 6 skills. If your child is in uh, kinder, first, second, third, even, and they're struggling to blend. Okay. Now, blending is quite the opposite of memorizing and guessing. So, if your child is guessing when they come to words, if they are memorizing a lot of words and they seem like they're reading, that's great. And you're like, but how do I know if they're memorizing? Well, try reading a book that with pictures and covering the pictures up. And if your child is just starts throwing random words out, then your kid has gotten into some bad habits of guessing, and it's easy to take those away as long as you as a parent know where to go. So let's talk about these 6 skills that can get your child to blend. All right. These are going to be purely like auditory activities. So there are ways that you can make them games. And so make sure you're following me on my social media accounts because I do go through some fun games that you can play. But I do these all the time, like in the car, when we're waiting, at the dentist, in the grocery aisle. You can do these and find opportunities to play with these 6 skills all the time. Okay, again, so these are kind of like a progression. So the first one is going to be isolation. So isolating the first sound in a word. What's the first sound in pig? And you want your child to say, you do not want your child to say p and start putting that vowel sound inside of it. Okay, we're going to make sure we're avoiding adding the us to b. And if you're not quite sure the correct sounds of letters, I do have a video that I'll make sure I put in the notes so you can practice that with your child. And when I started learning how to correctly say sounds, I was like, whoa, I've been doing this wrong the whole time. Teaching my kids that W says w. W does not say w. W actually says w. Think of water, web, Washington. You're adding in a vowel sound when you're adding the w. Okay, watching our mouths really helps. I always had to think, especially like for pig, right? When we're isolating, what's the first sound in pig? I think about like cutting my sound. So I'm going to cut that first beginning sound, not p or p. Okay, my mouth shouldn't be dropping. I want, it's actually like a breath of air. Same with the B sound. So B isn't b. What's the first sound in bus? B, b, b. Okay, it's almost like such a quiet little b, b, not b. Okay. D does the same thing. D is not duh, it's d, d, d. Okay. So isolation is your first skill. Okay. Isolating the first sound in a word. Okay. Really great, great activity. You can use like little Lego pieces. And I have some awesome, fun activities with materials you could just use at home in that Jumpstart guide with isolation. Okay, then we get into blending. Blending is where I already did this one as a practice, but I would say 3 sounds. Just start with 3 sounds if your child is just struggling with blending words at all. So start with 3 sounds. You could go mm, a. What word did I say? Map. So guess the word. Let's do another one. B, g. Bug. All right. So you, as the adult, are giving them the 3 sounds and then they have to guess the mystery word. Okay. That's called blending. The next one we're going to do is segmenting. So it's quite the opposite of what we were doing with blending. So I will say, okay, tell me the sounds you hear in pot. And they might go, pot, pot. So the blending and the segmenting are like opposites of each other. Okay, so we have isolation, we have blending, we have segmenting. These like later 3 skills are like more difficult. They're like later first grade skills. And they're really fun, and you can play with these in lots of different ways. But this next one is addition. Okay, so we're adding a sound. This one can be a little difficult because they use blends. What is a blend? A blend is any letters that sound like they're pushing together. They're not making a new sound, but like your mouth, the fancy term is co-articulating. Like your mouth is like really co-articulating those sounds together. And it's where I see the biggest issues in 3rd and 4th grade with spelling. For example, if the word is slide, so the child's trying to write the word slide, they're not hearing the l in slide. So they might write it SIDE and not even put that L there. And so though that shows me, we're having an issue with blends, and that is a very common issue. And that segmenting phonemic awareness would help them understand, oh, that word slide does have an l in there. I'm going to get a little close to the camera so you can watch my mouth. So for slide, watch. Slide. 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 So there are 4 sounds in slide. There are 5 letters, but with all the phonemic awareness activities, we want to make sure we are just listening to the sounds. So let's try that again. Slide. What word did I say? Slide. That's a really good one for segmenting. So with segmenting, you can start adding in some of those blends. Other blends are, I know I gave you an SL example. Another S example is like ST, like stop. Stop. The child might only hear sop, right? When they're hearing it. So if you ask them to segment stop and they say stop, you know they're missing that t sound. And with phonemic awareness, don't tell them. Say, oh, there's a T in there. Don't you hear the T? Let's try to avoid saying those letters when we're playing with these sounds. Now, we definitely can add in letters, but right now I want to just get you to really hear and see these 6 skills that kinder, first, second, third graders need to be really rock solid in. All right, so back to the addition skill. So the addition skill is where I would say, okay, say the word top, top, and then add a s at the beginning. What's the new word? Stop. So that blend, ST, is there, but the word before that initial sound is a word on its own, right? Top. And then I would add a s there. S. Let's add a s before top. What word do we have now? Stop. That is a really advanced skill. And if your child can do that, that is amazing. All right. So again, like with blending and segmenting, they're like brother and sister. This one, addition and deletion, are brother and sister too. So instead of adding a sound on, we're going to delete a sound, right? So let's go ahead and tell them the full word. Say smile. They'll repeat smile. And then you'll ask them to take away the first sound. Don't say letter. Don't tell them to take away the letter. Take away the sound. Say smile and take away the s. What do we have left? Mile. Okay, do you hear that? So those are really, really strong phonemic awareness activities that you do not need to be sitting down at the table with and doing, like, typical homework, right? These are all things that you can play with. And you can quite honestly use Chat GPT to like ask to give me like 15 words that have blends in it that are simple for a first grader to add and delete, and it'll throw all these words to you that you can play with. I do that all the time. The last one is substitution, and this one is like the most difficult skill. It is really hard for them, and if your child can do it, they are probably already blending those CVC or the three letter words. So for substitution, I might say, okay, say map, and the child will say map. You always want them to repeat that first word that you're saying to make sure they heard it right, right? They're not saying mat, right? We're saying map. Okay, so let me hear it. Map. All right, now I want you to take away the from map, take away the and add a t. What's the new word? Tap. So we're substituting, we're inserting a new sound to make a new word. These are really fun word puzzles. The kids have so much fun with them. So they're all oral games, they're quick, they're fun, and they are incredibly powerful. So, as far as letters go, we do not ignore letters. And there are absolute ways that we can include letters with these phonemic awareness games. And quite honestly, the research is telling us that we need to include them and put them all together. And that's where we move into my favorite routine, and it's called the Tap It, Map It, Graph It routine. If you really wrap your head around phonological awareness and phonemic awareness from this video, like you are totally ready for my 10-minute routine. I have that as a freebie. It kind of shows how we connect sounds with letters, and that's going to be my next video, where we create like word ladders, just like the word, let's say map, right? And I ask the child to take away the and add a t, right? We do it orally, but then I ask them to write it. And that's where we're really talking. That's our moneymaker. And that's going to be our next video. So, if you're wondering, like, where does my child actually start? This is very overwhelming, Emily. Again, this reading jumpstart guide can definitely get you started. This is more for those kiddos in the preschool, kinder range. And these 6 skills that I really went in depth with our first YouTube video today, it will be a little bit more that this might not be as advanced as your kid is, because it's like, tell me how many words are in the sentence, let's think of a rhyme for the word bat, cat, sat, right? But your child might be there, you might need to start there, and that's totally fine too. So start there. Again, there is a really handy a little assessment check-in where you can find out, where to start with these activities. And, remember that like every child doesn't start in the same place. And also, we do have the same roadmap. So the journeys might look different. A child might have to live in like the phonological, those for the first like umbrella term of sounds, for a little bit longer before we can get into the phonemic awareness, right? That's the little pieces of words. But really remember that they have to build upon each other. We can't jump, like if we're building an apartment building, we can't build the first floor and then jump past the second floor and just build the third, right? We have to scaffold and like do all that construction. Same thing's happening in our child's brain. Okay. So once you know where your child is at, everything becomes so much easier. And if you're like feeling overwhelmed, that is a great place to start. And then I also offer one-on-one coaching calls, so please look into that in my stan.store, which will also be linked in the bio. But just remember that reading doesn't start with memorizing words, and it doesn't just start with letters in a child's face. Okay, so it starts with hearing, it starts with orally producing things, it starts just having an awareness that the word stop has 4 sounds. St, op, right? All of that is part of reading. So everything else will become easier. I will see you in the next video, where I will show you exactly how to connect these phonemic awareness skills to letters. And that's where we're going to see true reading and true blending.